Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Dentists Who Invest podcast. Super special episode today where we're going to be talking about the profitability of clear aligners, something we've yet to cover, but there's going to be a ton of value contained within. And we've got in front of us Dr. Millie Morrison to help guide us, be our shining light through the crazy world of aligners, which I don't know anything about, which I'm just getting my little disclaimer in at the very start there. Camilla, how are you? I said Camilla
Yeah,
there like your mum. Camilla or Millie, which do you prefer?
definitely Millie. I'm only Camilla if I'm being told off still.
Yeah. Okay, cool, fair enough. So, Millie, there's lots of people who know you. There's lots of people who have yet to meet you. Maybe it might be nice if we did a little bit of an intro for those who are in the second category.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hi, my name is Millie, and I'm a general dentist working in London. So, I graduated in 2015 from University of Birmingham, and moved back down to London after that, and I've been here ever since. Started off, as we all do, working in a very busy NHS practice. And those of you who do know me know that I like a slower pace of life, especially in clinic. I don't like to be rushed, and I also chat a lot. So me and my patients would like to spend way too long talking. So I was always running behind, and I was in surgery 5, and I used to run down the corridor to get my patients, because even those like really precious few seconds really mattered, because I was just seeing so many patients all day every day. And then in 2017, I made a really conscious decision that I was going to say, right, no, I really want to do clear aligners, and I'm really going to implement them in the practice, because I'd been doing some fixed before, and I'd actually certified in Invisalign in the year before in 2016, but I hadn't quite got to grips with the online ClinCheck tool, the planning, and I felt like I didn't have that much control because of it. But I made that conscious decision, and thank goodness I did, because I always say that Invisalign changed my life, not because I got straight teeth, but because I really found my passion, and I really fell in love with the what it could do for patients. It gave me opportunities to educate, to teach, to mentor, and that then became my other passion. And now I really enjoy going into work. Like, I really enjoy going into work. And work for me isn't just in the clinic with patients. Work for me is also the educating, mentoring, and I get such a buzz doing what I do, and pushing myself and pushing my colleagues, my friends, to be the best they can possibly be, whilst doing clear aligner therapy. So yeah, it's changed my life and really found my passion.
I flipping love that so much. And you know what? It's funny that you said that because what you reminded me of when you were talking just then, the most recent podcast on the Dentistry Invest podcast, the one that I released 2, 3 days ago, it was on the yin and yang of success. Okay. And basically, I'll try to summarize that very succinctly. Tell me if I'm doing a good job or not. But basically, the yin and yang of success, right? Yang is the more aggressive, assertive energy. Yin is the more receptive, passive energy, right? So when we apply that to success, right, the yang version of success is where you go out there and you just hammering away, constantly trying to achieve things. But are you actually even doing the thing that you most enjoy? No, not necessarily, but you might be convincing yourself that you have to do that thing in order to be successful, to get the paycheck or whatever, right? But inevitably, because you're a human being, if you don't enjoy something, you won't be able to do it as much as you could potentially if you did enjoy it, right? So that's the yang version of success. You basically grab onto something that could be a vehicle with 2 hands the first chance you get, all right? Then you keep hammering away. And when I say hammering away, I don't just mean short term, I mean potentially your whole flipping life, okay? Because that's what most people do in their jobs, don't they? Most people don't enjoy their jobs, or at least if they don't enjoy, at least if they do enjoy them, they would rather be doing something else, right? Most of the time. So there's always a compromise in there somewhere, right? So what is the yin version of success? The yin version of success is where you're quite passive. You've got an open mind. You're a little receptive. You've got your eyes open, right? Until an opportunity comes to you. You try something that you like and you flipping love, right? And actually, all that time that you spent waiting for that thing to come to you, right? You still wind up getting to your objective at the same rate, or maybe even quicker than the yang person, even though from the outside looking in, for a long time, it looks and appears to a lot of people that you weren't doing that much because you were just trying different things. Then you find the thing that you did like, right? So obviously it's a balance, you know. And once upon a time, I never believed in all of that stuff, right? Until it happened to me with Dentistry Invest, right? And I look at you, and when I see you talking about Invisalign, I'm like, whoa, the yin version of success happened to Millie. Not to get too super hyper philosophical and all of that stuff, but I like that. I like those things. They make you, it just resonates with me. And it's important to realize that there's these two possible routes that we can take. In the West, we think it's just about blindly hammering at the first thing that we can latch onto and vaguely resemble something that we enjoy and potentially has the opportunity to get us to where we want to go. But it could be done smoother if we waited for something that we really did enjoy, potentially.
Absolutely. And you know what's really that really resonates with me because I decided I wanted to be a dentist when I was 4, so like really, really early on. And I latched onto it. My parents latched onto it throughout, and you know, I did well at school. I was academic, but also very good at extracurricular. I was always a very busy kid, all the way growing up, and I really latched onto dentistry. And then I got to dental school and graduated, and I was like, oh, do I even want to be a dentist? Like I really had this feeling like I've been going hard, you know, through early teens to get the work experience, to get the GCSEs, to get the A levels, to get into university, to work through university. And then when I got there, I was like, is this it? Like, has it been worth it? Am I actually going to enjoy it? And you know, I came out of hospital and I didn't want to be a dentist, but I thought if I'm going to be a dentist, I'm going to do it in the most interesting way I possibly can. And I applied to go into the army to be a dentist.
Awesome.
And it was you know, I didn't end up doing it in the end. But you know, thank goodness my parents, they know what I'm like. I'm quite stubborn. If I latch onto something, I'm probably going to do it. But you know, but then when I went into practice and I did start doing and I did start enjoying it again, and I think it was more to do with the hospital setting, and perhaps I was just a bit disillusioned with what the whole career was going to be like. But again, I found myself, you know, hammering away in the NHS, you know, trying to, you know, really trying to work hard, trying to do my very best, but really struggling with you know, the high pressure of the time, the targets, etc., etc. And you know, I made that conscious decision to do Invisalign and to be talking to my patients about it more. But I didn't know I was going to enjoy it. I didn't know I was going to really, really love it. Because at university, my report card for orthodontics was disinterested in the subject. I mean, partly, for many reasons.
Is that
But
literally what it said? Disinterested in the subject?
yeah,
Oh, wow.
the first thing, Millie seems to be disinterested. I was like, oh, okay, might need to pull my socks up here.
Oh dear.
But you know, I really, really fell in love with it. And you know, my mum said something very interesting a few years ago when when I started doing, you know, started teaching and you know, looking at the bone, looking at the pathway, and how to take those pieces and talk to other people about it, because my mom's very good at that. So I'd ask for her for help, and she said, "God, I hadn't really realised that you actively did it. I thought you just fell into it." Thanks, Mum. I mean, I did actively do it, but that passion did come very passively, and I found something. So there was definitely a bit of yin and yang working away there.
It's such a thing, isn't it? Right?
Yeah.
So here's my rule. Here's my rule of thumb. Okay. If it feels like you're yanging it, we're going to make, if yang could be a verb, right? If
Yeah.
if it feels like you're yanging it, then you probably are, right?
Yeah.
Now, that's not to say that you have to stop, but what it is to say is that if we're more receptive to other things, that then at that point, we are putting that yin energy out to the world, and we're leaving the door open for something to come along, which we could enjoy more. But if we're so focused on doing the same stuff, then actually we're not even receptive to that potentially happening. But I think the first step to understanding that and to being receptive to it is to understand that actually both of those things exist. That's me doing the yin and yang symbol with my hand. Does that work? Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
But like
Yeah.
with the educating, so like obviously the clinical part of it, the clinical part of my life was there, and then I never dreamt that I could educate, I could mentor, I could have that world, and that I was almost interviewed by people. Well, I was interviewed by people without even realizing I was being interviewed. So that maybe that energy was being put out by me, but it wasn't a conscious thing, but it came and then it opened up this whole other world, this whole other experience, which when I was at university, I couldn't get up and speak in front of people. I went bright red and my knees shook. So it was quite a big change. And I remember the first time I went and I had to do like a little study club with a line. And I was like, gosh, I've got to show my cases and I've got to do this and I've got to do that. And it was really nerve-wracking, but I loved it. And then, it's just got better and better and better.
Love that. And this is an important thing that you said, right? Maybe we can do it, but not even be conscious that we're doing it. Some people are subconsciously not open to it, and then therefore there's no door or opportunity for amazing things that they may enjoy more to be even let in because they're so focused on what's in front of them. And the only reason I say that is because that was 1000% me 4 or 5 years ago. And there might be people listening to the podcast who that resonates with and feel like they're in that boat. And now they think slightly differently, which is amazing, which is why we do this. Anyway, we're supposed to talk about aligners at some point today. So basically, and by the way, I am guilty of sidetracking the conversation massively. So that was totally on me. Let's pull it back to what we're supposed to be talking about. There'll be people listening to this who've never done aligners before. Millie, let's speak to those people first of all. Why should, or do you even think that everyone should do aligners? And if you do think everyone should, to at least some degree, why should they do it?
That's a really good question. I think one of the wonderful things about dentistry is that there's so many aspects that you can go into. So, but I do believe you have to try different things that perhaps you're not sure if you should do or not, because you might not find your passion, and I certainly hadn't found my passion. I was doing fillings, I was doing composites, I was doing root canals, extractions, dentures, blah, 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 blah. And then I hadn't really explored that clear, and I was doing fixed braces, so I hadn't really explored clear aligners that well. And it was only when I explored it that I found that passion and it really rekindled. So
awesome.
I guess from that aspect, yes, I believe everyone should try it if they're interested, if they haven't found their passion yet, because I think, I believe that maybe that will be your passion. But if it turns out that it's not your passion, then that's totally okay as well. What I would say is that it opens up opportunities to really serve your patients in a different way in terms of, giving them stability in terms of their occlusion, but also outside of the clinical, thinking about what it gives the patient in terms of confidence, being able to have a camera at an event and they're not worried about what side their teeth are being taken from. One of my patients came in the other day and she was like, it's just so nice because I was holding my friend's newborn baby and she was taking photos of me. And for once, I wasn't worried that, gosh, you might get my teeth in. I could just really enjoy the moment being with the newborn baby. And, being able to give someone that is incredible. I suppose we all, as I need to be able to diagnose and talk to patients about root canal therapy, even though I haven't done it in 5 years, we should all be able to talk about clear aligner therapy, even if we're not delivering it to our patients, even if it's someone else in the practice.
Totally cool. Makes sense. Awesome. Thank you for that. Let's jump straight in now to the second category of people who will be listening to this podcast. People who do clear aligners. Maybe they enjoy it. Maybe they love it. Maybe they've yet to see the light or understand the true potential of how it can help them. I feel that lots of those people probably aren't aware of how potentially profitable aligners can be. And the reason that I say that is I never did aligners. That never happened for me. I left clinical dentistry before I had the opportunity, and I would have loved to at some point, but it never quite happened. But what I do see on forums is people talking about how they're doing aligners, they like them, they're okay, they love them, but they're not quite as profitable as everybody was told that they were before they started doing them. Why do you think that is? Why do you think people say that?
I have to say, I mean, obviously there's the lab bill side of it. And when you're learning a new skill, so if you are right at the very start of that journey, or maybe partway into that journey, it does take more effort at the beginning to learn, to understand, to feel like to work out how it's going to work for you and how you deliver it to your patients. And none of us are exactly the same. And in our practices, they're all probably run slightly differently, even though we're all dentists in a dental practice. So it takes time to figure out that path, and it takes time to get your patient journey and your journey at that point where it's making where it's profit. So my first thing I would say that if you're not quite there yet, don't panic, because it does come. I mean, my God, if I think back to how I was doing aligners when I first started, I wasted hours and hours and hours of time from a profitability point of view. But from a learning point of view, God, I invested tons of time into myself. And I think that's the difference. So it depends what we're looking at. Is it money or is it learning? And then when you get to that sweet point, that's when you also see the profitability in terms of what you're taking home. And when I was doing this, I was working in the NHS, and I did hit that sweet point quite quickly, and actually it allowed me to spend more time with my NHS patients, because I had sort of that profitability from the Invisalign side of things. So then that that concern, like, am I running my surgery effectively? Am I going to be able to pay my rent, pay my mortgage, all those things that we still have to think about because we're human, we have to live. I could take away, and it actually gave me the ability to spend more time with patients who, from money profitability, maybe weren't spending that time wasn't profitable from a money point of view, but for that patient, me being able to spend that extra 5-10 minutes could have changed their life. We've got them out of pain. We managed to get the treatment done in one session rather than having to spread it out. So I really think that from both sides, it made a massive difference.
No, I hear what you're saying. It balanced out more, which meant
Yeah,
you could be more generous with other aspects of your dentistry.
exactly. And I think that's I know it's a difficult subject. It is a difficult subject to talk about, because in an ideal world, we would give everyone the time they deserve, but we don't live in an ideal world, unfortunately. And I think this is where we really struggle as dentists coming from university, from VT into the real world, because all of a sudden we've got to juggle things that we didn't need to juggle before, and perhaps we haven't been taught how to juggle. And it becomes difficult, and it becomes a rat race almost.
I hear you totally. So that younger version of Millie, naturally, as you've progressed through your career, you've learned lots of things, right? And that version 1 of Millie, when she was doing her first aligners, versus version 10, who's done a million, okay? You could go back and talk to version 1 and say, Millie, tweak this, do this way, then your profitability will go up. This is what you're doing, do it wrong, enhance it like this, all of these things. What would those tips be to that version 1 of Millie?
So I think the first mistake, or not maybe mistake I made, the first thing I did is I tried to take control of every single step, because I realized that these patients were high value patients. And so I really wanted to give them the best journey possible. So I wanted to control everything. So I was trying to do my job, nurse's job, reception's job, treatment coordinator job, and I was trying to do everything. And ultimately, there's only one of us. So we become our own self-limiting factor. So if I could go back in time, it would be like, delegate quicker. And now I work with a fantastic team. I definitely don't do everything. I do the bit that I'm there to do, and I do that well. And I really let the rest of the team do their bit, which they do really well. And I'm really privileged that I've managed to, maybe not collect people, the wrong word to say, but gather these people around me. So for instance, my treatment coordinator is a really good friend of mine. She's my next door neighbor, and she was looking for a job after maternity leave, and I was like, you'd be perfect for this, please come on board, please work with us. and she's amazing. So, looking for those opportunities where you can work with people and you can delegate some responsibility out. And then I would say my second thing is that I didn't spend enough time on the treatment planning. And there's this saying that the more time you spend on the ClinCheck or the treatment planning software, because clear aligners, obviously I do use Invisalign. There's tons of other brands out there. So whatever system you're using, the more time you spend on the planning, the less time you spend with the patient in the chair. And if we're thinking about profitability from the chair point of view, you want to be seeing patients in your chair because you need to see them, not because you've got to do things that don't need to be done in the chair. A lot of what I do now, I do online and I do virtually with my patients, and they love it because they don't have to travel to see me. Because even though I think I give them a pretty nice experience at the practice, they probably don't want to come and see me every few weeks. They'd like those sessions again to be really efficient, really effective sessions, rather than me sort of like, oh, I forgot to do this, so now you've got to come in for an extra session so I can give you some whitening gel, or I've got to do this, or I've got to do that. And then, from the treatment planning side of it, the ClinCheck has this amazing ability, as long as we can read it properly and we can get the right plan for our patient and we're making it predictable. So a lot of the time when I see tons of ClinChecks every week, not only my own, but a lot of other people's, and there are algorithms in the system which are there to achieve things which maybe not necessarily the patient needs. Sometimes it's one of the things I often see is there's extrusion of the upper anterior teeth and intrusion of the lower anterior teeth. But actually the patient doesn't need that from a facial aesthetics point of view. So that whole movement that you're trying to do is completely unnecessary. It takes time. It reduces the predictability of the movements we do need. So actually being able to spot those movements and understanding what's happening means that we get more predictability in the movements we do want. So therefore the patient patient moves better. So we finish quicker, patient's happy, and we're happy.
That's cool as hell. And that makes total sense. Because some people have a high smile line, some people have a low, but the software doesn't know that, right?
Exactly.
Cool. Really, really, really cool, really interesting. Let's say we were to make those hyper actionable. So if we were to take those points and we were to say, okay, like say for example, the first one, which was about seeing certain aspects of the treatment virtually, doing certain aspects of the treatment virtually rather than in the chair, right?
Mm-hmm.
What specific points are those? Are those the conversations that happen during the treatment? I've never done aligners before. I know vaguely how it's done. So imagine you were like explaining it to me and you were saying, okay, James, here's what will happen and here's what you got to change. Actionable bullet points.
So before the page, at one of the practices we work mainly on referrals. So before the patients come to see me, they have a conversation with the treatment coordinator over Zoom. And I used to do that before I had the treatment coordinator. What that meant is that I know that when the patient gets to my chair, they're going ahead.
Boom.
They're going ahead.
That's amazing, right?
And that half an hour call that we had before to pre-qualify them, but also to let them know what the treatment is, what it means, because a lot of patients, they hear about Invisalign, but they don't really understand they've got to wear the aligners 22 hours a day. They're going to have retainers. And some people, that's a barrier. And they're like, oh no, I can't do that. I don't want to do that. And you're like, okay, that's fine. Then you're not going to be right for this treatment potentially. So you can either look at other options. And then for the people who are coming into the chair, they've heard all that information. They've understood the information because my treatment coordinator or me, if they're, because I used pre-treatment coordinator, I used to do it myself. They have that opportunity to ask those questions that qualifies them to want to go ahead, or means they will go ahead. So it means the chair time, yes, I have slightly longer for those. We call them record taking appointments. So we have 45 minutes for those, but they are going ahead. Like we know they're going ahead because they've all that uncertainty, all that stuff before has completely gone. And then the other things we do online is we do the ClinCheck. When I go through the ClinCheck, when I show them the plan, that's all done online. through through lunch breaks, after work. So again, the chair time isn't being taken out. The chair time is really being used for what we need it to be used for. And when I'm monitoring patients, my monitoring is done virtually. I'm still quite hands-on, so I don't quite give patients all their aligners and see them later. But I used to see them every 4 weeks, and now I'll see them less frequently, as long as they're sending me the photos every week. So, those three things just give us so much more chair time. It's freed up so much time in the chair that then we can see more patients and do other things at the same time. So our chair time is much more profitable.
Flipping awesome. That was the hyper juicy stuff that
Yeah.
I really, really wanted to extract, because people listening to this podcast will get so much value from those things. And here's the thing, to someone who's been doing it for a long time, those might be obvious things. Someone who's new to it, they're like, oh, that is a stroke of genius. Are you with me? I think the basic thing to understand is that chair time is absolutely golden. And really, if there's any way that you can reduce the amount of time that patient needs while still getting the same outcome, that's fundamentally it, right? How do we do that? We have to have ideas, which is what you've just given us, which is wonderful. Yeah.
And the other thing that, a lot of people do free Invisalign consultations, and that works really well because patients do shop around for Invisalign. But if they FTA or they don't turn up, you've just wasted half an hour of chair time. But if you've spoken to them even for 15 minutes before they come in, then you've built a little bit of rapport, you've built that little bit of trust, and it's much more difficult for that patient not to show up to that appointment, because they should like you already a little bit, and they don't want to, it's part of human nature that, we're far less likely to not turn up to something when we already know the person, we've got that little bit of a relationship. And the other thing that's been instrumental, I have to say, is WhatsApp Business. Me, my treatment coordinator, we all have it, and we all communicate with patients that way. And we can export it, save it to the patient's files. So from GDPR, GDC side, it's all okay. But we communicate with that. So sometimes like the little questions where they want to call you and they want to book in a phone call, that doesn't happen because they can just pop over a quick message and you can reply to them, or by message, or you can give them a voice note. And again, like those touch points save you so much time in the chair, because they're not, sometimes, we've all had the patient who turns up and they've got 50 pages of questions they want to ask you written down. And you're like, okay, so let's go through. And they ask more and more and more questions. And you're like, okay, my next patient's coming in. But if you've given them the opportunity to ask those questions before they see you or when they come up, then you can manage that outside the chair time.
Love that.
Just so people know, like, we're not crazy. People can't contact us 24/7. WhatsApp Business is as a separate line on the same phone, but you can pop out of office on and out of hours. But it's you still have that balance.
Love that. Well, it's little gems like that. Like, we don't get taught that in university. Hyper useful and gives us our life back while still giving the same outcome for the patient. In fact, giving them an enhanced outcome, because they can contact you as and when more frequently within certain boundaries that we set, of course.
Yeah. So still having that professional boundary. But I mean, I find it so much easier than emails as well. Just pop it off and off you go.
Boom. Love that. Love that so much. That for me is the whole business side that we've covered. We seem to have covered a lot of the business side of Invisalign and clear aligners and making it more profitable. What about if we were to focus on things in the chair? I know we talked about the movements, making sure that all the movements are necessary versus the ones that the software sometimes prescribes us but are unnecessary, extending treatment. Any more tidbits, gems along those lines?
So in like the actual clinical bit of it, I mean, to be honest with you, the most of the clinical bit, weirdly, is the treatment planning. That's where like your brain really has to be engaged. And I spend if I've got a more complex case that's pushing my competency, then I speak to mentors. And sometimes if I'm doing something, I'll send a quick video to one of my mentors, and I'm like, can you just check the movements? Have I planned this right for predictability? And normally they come back and say, yeah, or they'll come back and say, oh yeah, but have you thought about X, Y, and Z? And then I can, add something. So that aside, in the chair is making sure that your appointments are really
Efficient.
not efficient. I can't think of the word I think I need to use, but quality. Like, it's quality time that you're spending in the chair, because to be honest, when I first started, I'd see a patient for review, there's no attachments to put on, there's no IPR to do, and I'm like, hi, it's just a quick chat. And you're sort of like sitting there trying to fill 15 minutes. Oh yeah, the aligner looks like it's fitting well, and then sending them off. Like, that's not quality time. It's not quality for me, it's not quality for the patient. That could have been done online, that could have been done in a different way. So it's making sure that those appointments are really quality appointments. And we talk, a big part of aligner treatment is IPR, so the interproximal reduction. And I find, speaking to other dentists, that this is one of the most time-consuming things, not just physically, but mentally, to get your head around, because you're stripping enamel, and it takes a lot of headspace. And I do progressive IPR, so I'll do a little bit at the start, a little bit a few weeks later, a little bit later on, as the teeth are moving. I don't try and do it all in one mammoth session, because again, you become less effective because you're tired. I like to use strips. I've tried burrs and oscillating handpieces and didn't really like them, so I do all of it by hand, and you get tired. So if you're trying to do loads of IPR in one session, honestly, I work from right to left. My right side IPR was way better than my left-hand side IPR, because by the time I got to the left, instead of making like 0.3 millimeters of space, I'll be making 0.2, because it's just how it happens if you do it in a mammoth session. So actually splitting it up over shorter appointments spaced out when you need to see the patient, for me, made me much more efficient, much more effective. And instead of spending, an hour doing it, I now spend 2 or 3, 5 to 10 minutes on it. So you saved yourself half an hour, which is crucial.
Boom. Top tips. Thank you for all these gems, Millie.
That's all right.
These are things.
Other big top tips. Sorry, clinical.
Oh no, it's wonderful. No, this is great. I'm loving it.
So other thing is, I'm trying to think of all the things we do, but because we do them every day, so I'm like, is that what we do? Not is that what we do, but does it save time? You don't need to cure your bond when you're putting attachments on. So put the bond on, put the attachment tray in, which is full, the composite, and then cure the bond and the composite at the same time. That's saved at least 10 to 20 seconds per tooth. Again, much more efficient. And also, if you can, you and your nurse have a separate light cure. So you're curing at the same time your nurse is curing. And I know that we all know we need to hold in the attachment tray sometimes, the template, because to fully seat it, but you can, and that normally takes your hands. So you can't hold a curing light. But if you get the patient to bite down on cotton wool, then that pushes everything up occlusally, so we know it's fully seated, and then that gives you your hands back.
I love that. You know what? I can feel your energy and excitement for this just like profusing out of you, because you just want to give more and more and more. I think I've heard that with bonding before and composite, that when you're bonding to enamel, actually you get a stronger bond if you don't cure the bond first. And the reason is that if you cure it, I think, I could be wrong. Maybe who the heck knows? All we know is that for the attachments, it's sufficient and it saves time.
Yeah. I actually thought so. Maybe I'm wrong. I thought it gave a less bond strength, but we don't need a terribly high bond strength, because we want to take the attachments off at the end, and we want them to come off.
Ah, okay. Yeah, probably not best to quote me on what I've just said. I thought I heard that. I thought I heard that for enamel you don't do it, but then denting you do, because you want to see the tubules. Anyway, all we know is that for the purposes of what we're talking about today, it's sufficient and it makes life easier. Boom. Millie,
I'm going to have to go away and read up on that now.
No, I want to know as well. Once a dentist, always a flipping dentist. I'm actually really curious. But anyway, Millie, I know that you help dentists with this stuff. You have courses and one-to-one
Yeah.
mentorship and all of those things. Is there any way that dentists who are listening to this podcast can find out more about you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, absolutely. So, with I often find that when you go on a course, you're really excited because you've been on the weekend course, and you're like, yeah, I can't wait to do it. And then you get on Monday, and life comes back. You've got that emergency booked in, or 3 emergencies booked in. You haven't got your lunch, and all of a sudden it all goes out the window. So trying to change that in terms of doing long-term or longer-term mentorships. But yeah, if anyone's interested, then either through Instagram, so just at Dr. Millie Morrison, or the website is alignofconfidence.co.uk.
Cool. And you're also on the Dentist Who Invest Facebook group, I believe, as
Yes,
well.
I am.
And Millie Morrison is your Facebook profile name, right?
Yeah, I hope so, because that is my name.
Millie.
Although I tell you what, so
Not Camilla though. Is it Camilla or Millie?
no, it's Millie.
Millie, there
So
we go.
I used to have my name as Millie Amy, because I had a patient who was trying to contact me through Facebook, so I changed it to Millie Amy, because so Amy's my middle name. And then I went and I was helping out on, Depeche Palmer. He was doing a composite at the AACD, and they'd printed us off name tags. Anyway, they'd obviously got my name from Facebook. So they introduced me as Dr. Millie Amy. I was like, oh dear.
There we go.
So I had to
The
change it back.
perils of using a Facebook alias. There we are. There we are. Millie, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. Some flipping incredibly invaluable gems there for the dentists who are listening. Looking forward to get you back once more very soon on the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.